Hey friends, um, let me start by saying that I think the energies around at the moment they feel pretty testing. And according to Andrea's, the people who talk on this kind of stuff, that's what we should be feeling. There's Mercury retrograde coming up, and there's obviously a new moon, and blah, blah, blah. Feels weird. So if I come across a little bit testy at the moment, I apologize. Anyway, I tried to make this little vlog on Downton Abbey earlier on today, but technical issues got in the way. I apologize for that. Drew, you thanks for that comment. I deleted that earlier thing, but okay, Downton. Downton Abbey is it Highclere? Highclere, I think it's called, is the name of the. I'll put a link in the description later on. But it's I think they call it a castle actually. And beautiful. They call it Jacobean style. So it definitely belongs to one of those ages from before in history. And when you look at the architecture, I haven't seen the best of pictures of it, but when you see the architecture, and I haven't visited the site myself, it is stunning, absolutely stunning, and built for people with grander expectations and, shall we say, possibly larger portage. Sometimes when you see these older buildings, there's one I visited recently in central London in Mayfair, and the handrail, the wooden handrail, was so massive I couldn't get my hands onto it properly. It's like, what? Anyway, I wasn't sure about this, but there's an important facet that I think that the BBC's show Downton Abbey is pushing, and that is to do with this idea of upstairs and downstairs. I can talk about how the evidence of this building being inundated by mud in some way seems to me absolutely obvious from the way it appears to have come up against the front, what's now known as the front of the building. There is definitely a floor or a basement. They call it the basement, and in some parts of the building they call it the light basement or the sky basement. I assume that'll be where you've got windows at grass height, at the height of the soil, allowing some light in there. But why I'm so absolutely confident about this is because I looked at the floor plan. And for those people who keep telling me, Mendel and others, who keep telling me that they're digging these deep basements, all that labor involved in digging these basements, because they need cold storage for vegetables and so on. I think there's logic in the cold storage underground, yes, but digging a entire castle floor plan into the ground in order to make a fridge the size of a football field and more makes no sense at all. That's not common sense, my friend. Common sense is that you make a larder, an underground larder, and even in a castle that size it might only need to be 30 or 40 square meters, not thousands of square meters, or at least many hundreds of square meters. But if you go and look at, and it's available online still, but if you go and look at the floor plan of Highclere Castle, you will see that the basement floor plan is more impressive than the ground floor plan. And this makes no sense. Why, if you were doing a basement, you would do it on a section of the site, and it certainly wouldn't need to follow all the detail of alcoves and so on. And you see this. You see that not only have they gone to the trouble of forming all these alcoves in the subfloor, which you can only use so much of, but there's more rooms. There's at least 2 large rooms that are in the underground basement and that aren't in the above floor, ground floor, the now ground floor. It would make much more sense for your ground floor to be the most impressive, the first floor to be somewhat less, because there'd be perhaps, you know, a room that, a space, a hall, a banquet hall or whatever that didn't have anything above it, just a roof. And this is what you see when you go there. You see actually where they say is the front entrance now might actually have been the side of the building, and that the original front entrance might have been, if you're looking at it from above, then it might have been to the, I'd say, on the eastern side of the building. That's what I think. So they've had to explain this anomaly away. Why have you got these massive and impressive big kitchens and big spaces downstairs? And I think there is this lie, the same lie that is that humans are always at war with each other and we can't stand each other and we've got to kill each other. There's that lie. And then there's this one of we've always needed servants. We've always needed, in order for us to be, in order for us to be wealthy or whatever, we have to trample on the underclass. And I think that the Downton Abbey show was pushed down everybody's throats. I'm not making any comment about the artistic value of the show, but it was given to everybody to reinforce this age-old idea of servitude and upper class and lower class and so on. I think that what Tartaria hints at is, or seems to evidence, is that, there was people lived well, There wasn't, perhaps if we didn't need to create things in the way that we do now, with this, everything is sort of very labor intensive. Perhaps we were able to create things much more easily, and we didn't need the use of slaves. But certainly the lie or the idea that the downstairs was where all the servants were, the servants' quarters, that doesn't hold water. Not with mud flood. Not with the inundation. Not with the raised floor levels. I mean, it's a massive amount of space. It's a huge, huge castle. And to say, okay, well, we're going to build this castle, but we're going to dig an entire floor plus 10%, 15, 20% even of additional into the additional kind of thing. No, you don't. I mean, it's contemporary, much more contemporary, I think, than we think. I had this old lady friend from up the road for dinner last night. I was making pancakes, and I asked her about the house that she grew up in as a child. She's 84 years old, so she grew up in 1935 onwards. And she lived in a house that her parents bought after the war in 1944, 1945. And it's what she calls a semi-bungalow, a massive, massive house. It's gone now, and there's 2 very large properties in its place. And in all the time I've known her about 4 years, she's talked about this house so fondly and so on, but I never thought to ask her if it had a basement. And I asked her yesterday, and she said, yeah, it had a basement, of course it did. And it's a massive, massive house. So what did you use the basement for? Oh, not much. We kept a few things down there, and, storage and so on. But, the truth is that these basements were this. She said it was the full size of the floor. It's the full size of the, it's a full size basement. And that's what you do not need that as a fridge, for a household. You might be excusing things in your mind about this Downton Abbey hoax, but I think you can't really say the same thing for an entire house. What is the value of it? It's in the dark. There wasn't really electrification when we're talking about. There wasn't. So we're talking about having to light. If there was electrification, that doesn't help. But we are not necessarily. The people who replaced the house. They put 2 very expensive houses. I'm sure they were well over the £1 million mark each on the site. They didn't bother with basements. Who needs a basement when you can have 2 stories? These beautiful houses that they call a semi-bungalow from that period are in, very nice neighborhood right next to a golf course, and the golf course has been there for over 100 years, apparently. So, it's prime real estate. I mean, the area at the moment, not where I live, it's just down from me, is a conservation area or something, area of special interest. Makes you think, huh? So yeah, I mean, it's just the practicality of not only digging out the basement and retaining all the walls as you lay brick against that, but actually having to then found that, another 3 foot or 2 foot at least of founding. Like that church I was looking at yesterday, how's that? That was, I should have rue not spending a little bit more time slowly showing you the walls, because the brickwork as I went below. So they'd preserved the central aisle of the church where, the vicar and his crew walked down. I was once one of those pew boys, altar boys with a candle, by the way. They've dug right next to the pathway, and you're down 4 to 5 foot, and all the way down there beneath that was brickwork. Well laid and so on, and it's like, why would you have that? Why would you create a floor that you would have to put so much, you would have to bulk it up by so much? You would start at your low point, wouldn't you? And if you needed a little bit of air space and you wanted a raised floor, fair enough, I get that, but you wouldn't go to the trouble of raising it by 5 foot. And these guys had dug only as deep as they'd gone, they'd found brick. Now, Downton Abbey is obviously a lie, because if that was if the downstairs of the castle was the original first floor, and there was no basement, that makes a lot of sense. Then they weren't putting servants down there, were they? They didn't have servants anywhere. I mean, this is another one of those curiosities, along with toilets and so on. They didn't have toilets, and they didn't have the need for bathing in the way that we do. So what did they know, and what did they do that was different to what we do? How did they nourish themselves? Was there an energetic exchange with the ether harvesting equipment on the roofs and so on in these buildings? Because these buildings were built with that knowledge. They were built with that insight. I was thinking about central heating last night. Again, my old lady friend was moaning about the lady next door who never bothered to put central heating in her house. She's died recently, and her house is going up for sale. But it made me wonder about central heating. Is it true that people didn't have much in the way of central heating, or did they have ways of heating their space without this lie of the big fireplace being the only means, having to have these large fireplaces? Perhaps they could control the temperature of the ether. So while I'm still babbling on about mud flood, I hope I haven't bothered to look at the chat, or even if anyone's here. I know that there's some chat going on, but I've got to stay on my track. If you don't know about mud flood and Tartaria, then I suggest you spend 20, 30 hours doing some research on seeing what people are saying about these subjects, and looking at some of the evidence of buildings that have been excavated where the street levels appears to be hiding 1 or 2 stories, perhaps 3 stories of a previously existing structure of the exact same building in the exact same style. What we see is so much evidence of the hiding of this floor level change. And I want to talk about the floor level change because it does vex me how it worked. Did it come down the road, as it were, and just sort of engulf places slowly like some horror movie? Was it a rushing, gushing load of water that brought with it silt? Was it a changing of the frequency of the earth around us such that things vibrated slightly differently, causing the earth to lose its density? I guess a bit like liquefaction, although I've never been a fan of the liquefaction model because of the instability and the how things would kind of shift, like this buildings would shift an awful lot, and you'd see a lot of higgledy buildings, although the Leaning Tower of Pisa is possibly an example of where it didn't settle straight down. And arguably a lot of the buildings that didn't, if it were such a thing, and there were buildings that survived it fairly well, and buildings that didn't, those that didn't would have been removed from our view quite some time ago. As we know, many of the best buildings are. I think it was, I don't know if it was John Levi or one of the other American dudes that's come up with some good stuff. Said, our comets are rent in the sky, and as they go through past, they're actually, what we're seeing is a deluge coming through of water, which then settles, huh? And maybe some of these bigger comets that have been harbingers of hard times and so on have been scratches in the roof, or whatever it is above us, and that brings with it a whole lot of water. I know, I have to be honest, my preferred theory is cymatics. I think that with a change, a change in the frequency, a vibration can be sent across this plane that alters everything in an instant. That's my preferred theory. And let's just say that would appear to us in the 3D to cause a bubbling and a boiling of the soil, and perhaps a shaking of things, because we do seem to lose roofs. Sometimes roofs have been replaced, and because all that's left is a facade. I tell you what is a facade is the BBC and things like Downton Abbey. And this idea, it really adds fuel to this kind of idea that the idea that there was an upper and a lower class, that these castles are evidence of upper and lower class, is perhaps a complete load of tosh. Why would they be going to so much trouble to hide that, or create this illusion that that's what the basements were for, was for keeping the servants, rather than actually that's where the best part of the house was, where people lived, and there was much more house above. So yeah, that's my thought on that. I hope it's useful. Perhaps I should check on the comments. Yeah, I see there's a few people stop by, so I'll say hi. Hey, Drew. Thanks, bro. This is good stuff. Hi, Dave. Peoples. Hey, Squawk. How you doing, friend? Yeah, notifications. Sometimes I get notifications about things like after the fact, hey? But I'm not, I would, in time when I teach myself how to use this better and get maybe a laptop, I can start to do the Hangout thing, right? And I'd love to invite some of you guys along and just to kind of be able to have a two-way conversation, because that's really what I would prefer. I don't need for people to listen to me droning on. I'd much rather be part of a discussion, So I'll do that in due course, and then it'll be awesome to hear your voices on the other side and share ideas. And actually, I've been thinking I need to just check that I'm not hearing one of the brothers and sisters out there that are worth listening to because I think we learn from each other, and I've learned so much from the people around me, and I'm not obsessed with Tartaria or Mud Flood or Flat Earth, but I am keen to keep moving this thing forward, moving our knowledge forward and moving our kind of sense of who and what we are forward, and that's why I'm talking as much as I am, and for the various reasons of having a little bit of spare time. Because we do need to hear each other, and I have got a lot of time for those that are focused on some of these key areas of research. Don't get me wrong. That's not what I'm saying. This needs those minds doing those things. I think that seems logical, but they also need, as do we all, to realize and reckon on the magnitude of the spiritual journey that I think we're on. And to that end, we need to be listening to and sharing ideas, about that. Because I guess, like me, most of folks come from a position of sod it, and it's only this, or it's not nothing, or it's so we're all raising our game, and we can all learn from each other. I've learned from many men and women over this last few years, things that I never thought I'd learn, and people I never imagined I'd be learning from. Yeah, so we just do our bit, hey? Yeah. As I said, the moon is a little bit kind of glum and what have you. I have had a little rash of a dozen or 20 new subscribers, so welcome to this channel. And I was going to cheers with a glass of foul water that I've just washed out of the distiller, just to make sure that you're all aware that the tap water and the bottled water you're drinking is not so good for you. Treat it with love if you're drinking it. Treat whatever you eat and drink with love. If you disrespect the food on the way in your mouth, then if it's bad for you, it's probably going to be worse. And even if it's good for you, it might not be as good for you, some say. So clean your water and stuff if you can. Yeah, distill it. Martin talked about frequency changing the earth. Yeah. Martin, that'll be Martin Lika, I assume, Drew. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's fascinating, and cymatics is I think where it's all at. And one time, he or Lee showed some. I think it was Lee was in London, and he was filming some like form. It's concrete form. We would have once upon a time said it was carved stone, but I think it's concreted form that he, I think, was describing as a cymatic device. And it was like, oh, I've seen that shape before, that design before. And it was that one time a guy showed me a piece of top secret equipment for in the mobile phone industry. He was like, this is the cast iron device, cast metal, whatever, alloy, whatever it was, device. It's a big plate thing, right, with all these little like rat run shapes inside of it. And it made absolutely no sense to me. I said, but this is what they actually use in the phone mast. This would have been, I would say, 3G, not 4G, because it was some time ago. And when I saw this picture of what Lee was showing, I was like, shit, that's the same form. That's, I couldn't obviously swear that it was identical, but it was like the same kind of weird, maze of forms that looks like some kind of rat run. It's like, wow, man, what are they doing? How are they using the ether, their knowledge of how the ether works, to just tweak things in certain ways, change things in certain ways in order to create the modulation that gives you mobile phone technology, etc. And then when people talk about what HARP is and can do, and assuming some of that stuff is real, and the ability to change frequencies in the ether is real, and we've seen cloud forms change and so on, then I think yeah. And sometimes I go so far in my thinking as to imagine a scenario where all of these churches were somehow a linked neural network that was at a time used to cause the shift, the because that's all it would take. It would take like just a 5-second alteration, a 10-second alteration, and everything is different. But if you look at the way that these churches are all set up, and they still exist. I was in what it alleges to be a 13th century church yesterday, and another one that was younger, the one that was being dug up. But still, these are ancient, and as we understand things, and they all have survived. There's these parish churches all over the place, and if they're cymatic devices, then were they used against us? And were they the thing? Like were they the what they call harp? Were they the harp of that time, a previous time? I mean, I'm not bought into the idea that the churches always were owned as churches. I've said to Lee a little while. I've said before that I think they may have been called charges before they were called churches, and the church was a name that was attributed to it to kind of convince people that it was used for religious purposes rather than some energetic thing. But imagine you had an energetic tool that had the ability to heal people because it used vibration and frequencies and so on. But it also had the ability to do other things because it's just a matter of turning the dial. Then let's just pick on a bad guy. If you were a Rockefeller, if you were a Rockefeller and you realized that, you could do it differently, you didn't have to give people away free energy and so on, and you wanted to control the game, then you destroy the machines. Use the machines initially to destroy the earth. I mean, that theory doesn't sit well with multiple mud floods, Perhaps it has happened more than once. I'm willing to accept that in some places, yeah, sure. And in other places, the inundation has been so vast that there's no evidence of any civilization having been there. So, there's a lot of unanswered questions, and I'm not suggesting that that's going to answer all of the questions, but it's just food for thought, if you're interested. Is that Red Eye? Hey, Red Eye. There's a church down the road with similar. Yeah, I mean, what's crazy about this Red Eye is that if you walk around the church and look closely at fixtures like where doorway arches are built in, where ventilation ducts are put in, these things look like they've been done as a secondary fix with a different kind of cement, sometimes a different configuration of brickwork. There's a church down from me where the central what do you call it, steeple was the central where the bell tower or the belfry is, that space, which is often as modern or Lee rather, brought to my attention first, was that they were separate. They were like they were the original building, and then the church is built onto it. And in this case, you can see very clearly that it's two very different color bricks, or quite different color bricks. So if you go down, you start to see all of these little tells of there being something more going on. And as I said, this old lady, the house that she came up in was a basement and possibly a mud flooder. So the age of these things is hard to tell, but perhaps not nearly as old as we're led to believe. And one thing we know for sure is that certainly here in England is that there is a parish church every few miles. They are like a little a network. And I think that now that you know the Earth is flat, you know that this network can basically communicate across the entire plane, or certainly the plains of England and beyond that. There would have been rather larger spires given, on hills nearby, and then there'd be some in the valleys, and they'll be communicating perhaps with those. But the ones that are on the hilltops, they're in a network with ones that 100 miles away, because it's all flat, it's all level. And so, have they used a vibration technique to shake things up? Yes, I think that's possible. And then they blame it on an act of God, I think. But I think Jedi is good to get that's why I do it. It's good to lay some of this footage out there for people to see, because when you realize the preponderance of what appears to be mud flood surviving buildings, you start to see a lot of things in common. Unusually well endowed basements. Often these sort of windows at street level, which really don't make much sense. As I said, there's fixtures that don't make sense, door heights that aren't the same around the same construction site. A variety of internal, amendments, like the one I filmed yesterday, where they had this door hidden behind the heaviest curtain I've ever felt. But what if you went to the outside, was possibly an original front door to the church, and they changed things around to suit. But the houses, and we live amongst mud flood evidence. It's all around us, and when people start to kind of pick the wool out of their eyes, they might start to see that this same logical stretch that people like to make about there being underground fridges, or they were just doing it because it saves space, or whatever else. It just doesn't compute across so many different houses and spaces and places, and away from built-up cities, for example, where it'd be like, you've got so much land here. Why would you bother, with digging out a huge basement by hand? You can just build level off your ground, and a little bit of foundation, perhaps, but off you go. Nah. Anyway, it's nice to have some peoples in the chat. I should get my glasses so I can read this. Very well. Dolly Daydream. Hi. Is this about me? You're a good man, Trinity 4. See you all again. Got to go. Oh, that's really nice of you, Dolly. Thank you so much. She said Tesla Tower found in Moscow. No. Tesla Tower found in Moscow. Wow. Free energy coming. I hope you're right. It does bring to mind. See, there is mayhem going on in vaccine world. If you're in the vaccine world, like my wife has looked in the vaccine world, and follows doctors who are all, anti-vaccine, and the vaccine world is exploding, and people are mothers are being pushed to the limit by this idea that they're now going to cause their child a lot of harm, and are being forced in some cases to go through the vaccination program. In I guess in so many other areas, I don't know. I don't follow. I know in politics they've got votes coming up, and people, we're waiting for this vote, and what's he going to do? Trump going to do, or what's Theresa May going to do, and all of this, and I know there's a whole lot of fiddly faddly here, there, and everywhere, really, in Australia. It doesn't matter where you look. So it feels like there's shit coming down the pipeline, and I don't know why they would give us free energy. They just keep bringing shit down the pipeline. However, one of the things that seems also apparent to me now is that they are trying to shake and wake people. So, like the perhaps for the flat Earth community, the documentary Behind the Curve, is that what it's called? Which it seems, in some cases, seems to be empowering flat ball earthers to come out of the closet and say, "Yeah, you see how ridiculous you are." Maybe that was the intention, was to get a kind of documentary together that would do that, because even just the other day, I was already getting, and it was only days that since it had been released on Netflix, and I was already getting heat in the park about that. So, again, it's about the anti-vaccine agenda, and forcing people to take vaccines when they've now been told, thanks to Andrew Wakefield and others, they've been told that it's bad for you. It only fires them up, right? So you're actually, one of the things that got me started along this whole journey was like those documentaries on Netflix, like Cowspiracy and Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, and things like that. Was like shit. What are we? And but I now know that they create that kind of they create that tension, they create that place to go and argue with the because now you're aware that there's something to argue. You join the fight, and then you realize in a few years' time, your fight is you're peeing against the wall of silence from the masters. So I think that if they're telling people that there's free energy and you've been screwed by the Rothschilds and the other lot, Harriman and Astor. By the way, I think that the Astor family, if we're told that they'd all died on the Titanic, that's probably bollocks too. I think that was just their kind of way of getting out of that. We've offered just like Gaddafi and Hussein, we've offered the dialectic, we've given the boogeyman, we've created the boogeyman. And in the case of the Astor family, perhaps we've created the kind of the antithesis to this greedy, fascistic system of capitalism. Or were they were again? Yeah, they apparently supportive of not supportive of the Federal Reserve Act, but so they were probably sitting around the boardroom with their pals going, well, we'll be the counter, and then when we're finished being the counter, you can wipe us out, and we'll go and live on that island. So I threw myself off the tangent there. So I'm talking about how they want us thinking that there is a white knight in shining armor about to save humanity. And so the free energy thing is interesting, because you can tell people that it's free energy until you're blue in the face. In fact, you can kind of power something up in front of them and say, here you are, look, it's generating free energy. And they'll still go, well, I'll pay my energy bill when it comes in, because I've got to do that. Am I being a little negative? I do apologize for that. Oh, Dolly's still here. When people realize Trump is more than what they see, I hope I'm not reading that incorrectly, asked to come into fight. Yeah. If I get what you're saying, like I saw that with the Barack Obama What's his name? Barack Obama or Barack Osama? Or Osama bin Barack? They're not the same person, are they? I don't want to start a malicious rumor. That would be impossible. Or would it? Yeah, Barack Obama was all about Barack Osama. I mean, it didn't. Isn't it kind of shows you the psychopathy of the game at play against us that they use because obviously Osama bin Laden was a was a puppet, was a name that he was given up. The bin Laden family, who were well rewarded for using their name. I have no evidence of that, but you got to know that they're all buddies and hanging out in the same knob jockey department. They are that Osama bin Laden and Barack Obama. You got to know that that's mind play, and it's a brown guy who might be Muslim. Obama. It's all clever mind play, But I'm not allegating that Barack Obama is Osama bin Laden. That's impossible. What I am suggesting, though, is that he was a catalyst to bringing. They said at the time 95% of black voters voted in the Osama bin Laden, the Barack Obama elections, the first time around. I wasn't paying attention, I think, by the second time, but the first time around it was phenomenal at bringing minorities, what is called minorities, into the game. And really, some black people I knew out here, black people I know, but, I don't talk to that many people now that I knew from that time. They were like, this is it, the Messiah is come. And, the lot of black people, I was involved with TEDx Africa, kind of like an African TEDx thing for a while. And, they were like, yeah, man, it's all going to turn around, man. And isn't Barack, partially from something, Tunisia or somewhere? No, not Tunisia. No, I forget now. Zaire? No, it wasn't. Anyway, it was all probably made up, so it doesn't matter. So that's my thought on that, Dolly. Yeah. Conning the public to public. Oh. I'm still reporting is because conning. Oh, sorry, man. I must get my glasses. Obama bring down USA black walking away from Democrat. Black. But I think the thing is that there is a third party politics in America. In what do they call themselves? The not the independent. The you'll know what I mean. It'll come to me, and perhaps it's a little bit like in the UK where people kind of like, okay, the two main parties are so shit. We'll have to go for the third party. But it's more like if we've always talked about the that the left wing and the right wing are wings of the same bird. Well, then the third party must probably be the bird's dick, because it's just the same beast. And I'm no longer at all in the idea that this in this country, no matter who you were, that you set up a political party and you became voted by the popular vote to become prime minister or whatever, you would have to go to the Queen and ask for her permission to set up a government. So that's not much good, is it? So we and also government is mind control, right? So let's not forget that. So when I hear wonderful people making their fight against the government's vaccine program, they're actually blowing smoke up the government's ass, to use an American thing, ass. I once went into a bar in America in 1988, and I asked the bar lady, attractive lady, I was 20 years old, and I had a fake license so I could drink. It's ridiculous. I'd already been to war and I wasn't allowed to drink alcohol. You can use a gun, son, but don't go and drink any of our poison. Now, I asked this lady if I could have ice with my drink. She thought I said ass and called her boyfriend over. Fuck, so I'll go and throw myself off the track again. Sorry, what was I saying? Can someone help me there? Damn. Okay, wait, Drew, what was I saying? You just saying? His wife is a man. Oh yeah. Barack Obama. And I mean, is Michelle Obama a man? I don't know. It's possible. I just don't get into that conversation too easily because it's like something that I can't prove. Same as the story about Barack Obama being, the choir. He was in a Chicago choir or something, and some of the gay choir members are talking about him, and one or two of them died or something because he'd had an affair or he'd had a relationship with one of these gay dudes. I don't know. I mean, everything is up for grabs, and I don't. Oh yeah, with Trump. See, will they bring a woman next after Trump? Yeah, Kenya. That's it. Obama was apparently from Kenya, but he was obviously that suitable kind of guy to get all these. Oh yeah, that was what I was saying about the black voters, shall we say, and the people in the vaccine kind of community or the geoengineering community. They are absolutely rabid because there's restrictions on their freedom of speech coming down. There's restrictions on their medical freedom, and this is absolute. But the problem is that you're asking the government for freedom. So you're asking the very body that kind of decides. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, why are we making that same mistake of saying, oh, so you've said something that I don't like, and I now have to petition you to alter that in some way. Well, why should I even care what you said? Why should we be subject to the government's diktat as it decides on these things? What they're saying is they want the government to change what it said. I'm saying we no longer want to have any consideration for what the government is saying on these matters because it should no longer be enabled. It no longer has the moral authority to be making these kinds of decisions. It has shown so many times over that it doesn't have its best interests invested in the health, the genuine well-being of the human way, the human experience. It doesn't. And if you think otherwise, you've not yet done the necessary research into the things, the nature of this game. And that's quite obvious to most of the people who follow this channel. But when we get sucked into a squabble, whether it's that our government has undertaken a particular action, by participating in the anti-war campaign, you're actually crazily kind of giving the government credit. You see, that's what we're doing, is we're crediting the government. We're saying, oh yes, you've made a decision, and that decision is so bad that I have to kind of get involved. I'm forced now to get involved. Or in the case of the black vote for Barack Obama, the situation is so bad for the black uh, man that even if he's always hated government and said government is a crime against all of black man, whatever, he's now going, shit, there's a chance, let me join the race, let me put my energy behind that. Same as the women's vote, same as the gay vote. Oh, we've now got a chance to kind of change policy because there's a gay this or a whatever. So they do this is how they do it all the time. Or do the anti-hero version. Say, have such an awful president, have such a bad decision maker, have a guy who causes you to go to war, then people will obviously snap your arm off to get the next guy that comes in line, that's offered to them. But he'll always be a player of the beast, of the bird, of the system, the master, trying to have you believe that you're meant to be downstairs in the basement of Downton Abbey, rather than in the penthouse, in the sunlight, enjoying the fruits of this wonderful world. I don't mean in some kind of, let me put my feet up and let the grapes come to me. I think we need to go and we need to make our own grapes. I think so. I mean, I'm not asking for a free energy system that says I can just sit here and chat all day long for the rest of my days. No, I need to be productive. I need to be producing things more than just jibber jabber, philosophizing. What's a friend has said? Self-actualization. We need is much more than sitting in an ashram for 30 years. We do need to be experiencing this beautiful, incredible world that we have. And there's no doubt that the intention of the Downton Abbey type mindset is to rob you of that, to introduce that kind of light, to hold it in the dark, to keep it in the basement. If you didn't hear the start of this vlog, I am talking about the Downton Abbey TV series that was so popularized, which I now contend quite clearly is a candidate for mud floodery, some sort of inundation that's changed the floor level, and evidenced by the floor plans themselves. I mean, the basement floor plan is impressive, much more impressive than the first floor plan. Makes no sense. Why would you dig more into the basement than you would for the first floor? It's easier to build above ground, right? Even today. So, I've realized that therefore the entire edifice of the story that goes, we have always been slaves, and this grand past that we see was an example of that serfdom versus high class whatever. Which mirrors what I was saying right at the beginning about, we've been sold this lie about us being violent, bloodlusting, barbarians. And most people don't realize that that's where we've been trained to be, and in our minds and in our way, the way we go about things and so on. When the system complains about football hooligans, I mean, this is engineered in, and it loves being able to put some of that on the telly and to say, oh, now we have to have 500 police at every football match and with big guns and big horses and small guns. And I saw a video this morning of the police lining people up at the Victoria bus station, the one that brings people in from sort of the Greyhound type bus. And it was like a random immigration check, checkpoint. And it's like, whoa, just change the uniforms to like an SS kind of black uniform, and you know, and or even in my case, the South African, you know, 1970s, where the white police could set up their little, you know, checkpoints and check people's what they called the dom pass. You know, it was their kind of, you know, black folk had to carry a pass around with them and show it at a moment's notice, or be treated pretty harshly, I would suggest sometimes, not always. But still, it was draconian, and here we are again, 2019. Who would have thought it? But this is how this is what they've done. 9/11 to Saddam Hussein to weapons of mass destruction, and then the sort of jihadi John kind of stuff, the false flags and the training events, you know, shown in the media to be pretending to be kind of real events. All of this is, and the constant drip, drip, drip feed of for British television viewers, constant footage of this camp in Zaja, almost like rats trying to get onto a ship or off you know, off the shore onto a ship, and footage of them trying to cling to the undersides of freight trucks and the like. You know, all of this to keep up the constant drip drip of poison. The comments on the video that I saw this morning about this stop and search, not stop and search, that's also coming. Stop and search, more of that. I saw a headline on that, but you know, this setup of a border, you know, quick immigration check for folks. People in the comments, some of them, I don't know, maybe 50-50, but some of them were saying it was on a channel called Jedi Online, if you want to go and have a look at it. Jedi Online, filmed by a lady who seemed to know her stuff, and was asking the police, you know, if they had any right to search them and so on. Of course, these drones just going through the you know, and of course to them, they have been given more than just the drip, drip, drip of fear. They've, you know, of you know, potential terrorist threat and so on. And, you know, which is why many of them will say, oh yeah, we need firearms now, we need more protection, we need heavy armor gear, we need, you know, vehicles that can handle that kind of thing, you know. It's all in response to this imagined threat. And of course, in the case of immigration, this kind of constant drumbeat. And the comments were, some of them were damn ugly, where people are going, yeah, you know, catch them and put it and string them up. And this is where we are at, is that people have become so fearful. It makes me realize this is how they did it in Germany in 1930s. All the migrants and the Jews, or the you know, the gypsies, I think, and, you know, other less desirable types were eventually rounded up, I think. So you know, this is sort of what we've been creating, you know. So don't put it on your brother and sister. It's not your brother and sister, you know. They are simply the pawns in this, you know, just like I was. He's a white South African, you know, just a pawn in a system, you know. Yes, it might be that I have a certain belief system based on the ideology that has been drip fed to me, but it's a pawn nonetheless, as are the police people, you know. They are just pawns. And the lady who is so passionate about the anti-vaccine campaign and is going to campaign and lobby and do all of this sort of stuff is fantastic in her, you know. Admire that courage and that willingness to take things on and take the system on. However, it does, when we put our energy into this, then we justify and we give value to that system. And I think we have to think about that and think about how we go about it differently, where we don't inflate this system by giving its diktat. I know it's easier said than done, so I'm not suggesting I have all the solutions, but I think it's folly to keep begging the master as it were, when in fact the entire relationship has been flipped on its head, and it should be the so-called master who is subservient and in the basement asking us for permission for these things, not demanding that we have to, and for us to find excuses why our child shouldn't be vaccinated or why this shouldn't happen. And if you're new to my channel, you may not know my baby child does not have a birth certificate. He has a passport, but we never certified his birth with the state. We never registered his birth with the state because we didn't want to hand over ownership, and we didn't want to give the state some sense that it had the right to instruct us how to parent our child. It's a series of letters that have to be written in order to kind of get through this, but it is doable. And they can't fine you. They threaten to fine you. They threaten various things. But if the mother is the master here, it's up to her. But the state has kind of convinced us that we have to seek permission slips from the state to excuse ourselves, when it should actually be flipped on its head, and it should be the state coming to me on bended knee and saying, please, sir, no, don't call me sir, please, David, can I vaccinate your child for your child's best interest? Yes or no? No. Okay, sorry for wasting your time. Here's £50 for, wasting your time, off you go. It should really not be, but the difficulty is that we swim in a tide of ignorance, a vaccine, because they're frightened people are frightened by the news that, various outbreaks and polio and measles and this and that and flu and so on. So they tend to sort of be willing to go along with that. So when you suggest to them that this is a nonsense program, you're kind of not, people are not really going to hear that. So anyway, I feel like I've spoken for long enough. I should probably say goodbye. Wait, is that I can't, the West obsessed with nanny state? Yeah. Do you think it's just the West? Is that John? Do you think it's just the West? You see, African people, or perhaps South American people sort of more what I consider to be indigenous, perhaps, or aboriginal to those places, might say that they were enslaved because it seems like the progress of house-breaking humanity came from the West and traveled further west and into Africa and did that. But I know this is kind of going off perception rather than, deep insight, so take it from that point. But the Chinese and the Japanese kind of people, in some ways, appear to me to be far more subservient, far less. And I guess I'm only working from newsreels here, and from, I have very little to back this up. But my sense is that these people in the East are more housebroken than even us here in the so-called West. And so it offers the possibility that the sort of the housebreaking, if you like, or the gathering up and the controlling of humanity has come from China, or from that way. And I mean, isn't The Art of War written by that Chinese dude? Doesn't that say, the best way to kind of beat your enemies from within, or to look like him, or something like that? As I say to African folks, there's no way like a shipload of Portuguese just turn up, 500, 300 dudes, skinny Portuguese dudes, turn up at Ghana and go, okay, we're going to bump you all over the head and take over this country. No way. The people who take over a country have to look like the people of the country, So for us to be ruled secretly by, or run secretly out of China. Why not? Just because we're given this idea of China as this kind of underdog. I mean, haven't we given this idea of Britain as underdog when in fact Britain's been pulling most of the strings from the what seems the last few centuries? So could not the hordes, as it were, have moved from east to west? But before, I don't mean east as in Greece. I mean east as in Far East. So I carry no favor. I don't take any. I don't like to consider it to have any favor for any group to be more or less subjugated. But obviously, in moments of time, and if you only look at little pockets of history, then obviously there are certain groupings that have benefited from this dialectic of them versus us, rich versus poor, brown versus yellow, or black or white or pink. So this it's a because it does seem that even if it was say Chinese, there is ultimately like an overarching non-named entity that doesn't have the China is just a it was once Tartaria perhaps with the China is just a name given to a piece of land, and the Chinese therefore assume that title. Yes, they may look different, say, from the folks further to the west, but I don't know. I can't really explain that. Anyway, that's my thoughts for this day and for now. Vaccines are a form of premeditated murder. Steve's wide awake. Absolutely right. The vaccine program, I think, is embedding. Maybe not in every case, but it would be kind of naive not to think that this stuff is all not tainted. But the vaccine program, I think, is absolutely like a ticking time bomb, putting illness into the system or creating an injury to the system. And it's that injury that's later exploited by stress, diet factors, aging, etc. Nice to see you, by the way, Steve. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks all of you for stopping by. Actually, I really appreciate it, whether you're here now or not. Drew's still there. Yeah, he hasn't been sick in 6 years. That's amazing. But you've been awake for quite a long time, haven't you? My manager lady, she got full spectrum kid institutionalized, and her other two are always sick. Did you say immunized or something? Institutionalized. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's as Steve said. For me, it's not just the vaccines. It is obviously the TV. It's the lot. It's the food pyramid, the toxic history, the clever way that they built in chaos, and death. And I've suggested this before. If you haven't heard me say this, it's worth saying again. I've suggested that if we are mud flood survivors and we came out of the sort of wherever we survived from. I don't mean us, obviously. I mean our forefathers, 5, 6, 7 generations back. If they came out of this sort of, they were those that, because I imagine that a mud flood is quite survivable. Although there must be like the Black Death or the plague or these kind of the fire run, and there must be significant loss of life. I think I know they say the fire line and no one died, but that's probably because they don't have any records of anything, and the mud flood possibly would have wiped out any of that. So and also they don't want to have to try and kind of justify that number of death. Anyway, whatever. I think that that our story is possibly that of Tartaria, that of survivors of something else, and that they're continuing to the program of exploitation and killing. And for people who are more knowledgeable on the Bible than me, they might be able to help me with this. But I think that the Bible may well be a playbook for people to know what's coming and what's planned and so on by the people who run the show. And they talk about different kinds of plagues and different kinds of events. So it may not be that it's the mud flood to come. It may be that it's the tsunami of sickness, where people are literally freaking dying in the streets. And maybe that's true already, sadly. But I mean, in their numbers, in large numbers, that in 30, 40 years' time, that what we see is just a horror show of, I mean, it's already pretty gruesome when I walk around. I go to my local shopping precinct and look around there and see folks that are, many of them, I want to say 2, 3, 4 in 10 are quite obviously unwell, obviously unwell. And then if you sort of take a happiness gauge, okay, I don't particularly call it a happy day, but if you take a happiness gauge, then that's like 8 and 9 out of 10 people are looking miserable as anything. And this is meant to be a successful country, but the health of the country and the people is pretty shabby, actually. That's why they want all these youngsters coming in from the Middle East and so on, because they need young workers who've still got a backbone, because they've melted the backbones of the British youngsters, some of them, not all, obviously. They've disabled so much of the workforce, and of course many people are so disillusioned with the nature of it. It's like, this is working in a call center, wearing a colorful, bright orange or whatever uniform to represent the company that you work for, the corporation, I should say, that you work for. Every third dude is walking around with their company's name on their chest. I am, Sony, or I am whatever, the plumbing company. Everybody's becoming just a labeled element of the corporation that is going around us. And I think it's really upsetting the hell out of people. There's not much fun in all of that. There's not much creativity. There's not much spiritual growth in all of that. It's like, what's the point? We're just Darwinian, So I'm pretty sure that this is meant to pop. I'm really sure that there's meant to be like this sickness coming, because they have poisoned us in every way possible, and in ways that we can't even think about that we've been poisoned. So I know this for sure, that there is like what I call a full spectrum battle going on for your body and mind, and you need to protect yourself as much as you can from the things that are out there. And I wish you well with your health and your family's health. I see so much sickness, so much. This lady who came for dinner last night, serious dementia. Oh. Too late. I try and talk about distilled water, but too late. Try and talk about pulling metals, but too late, And of course, even the family, you try and mention to them things that they could do and stuff. So, the ball is rolling down the hill, or the avalanche, or the boulder is rolling down the hill. And how boulders roll down hills, they strike things and fly off in a slightly different direction, but ultimately it's going to end up at the bottom of the hill one way or another. And it's going to bring a lot of detritus down with it. And I think if we're to be the next generation that goes, or our children are to be the next generation, then we need to do is the best that we can to inform them, because much as I would love it to go away, the system's not going away anytime soon. Much as I'd love for us all, brothers and sisters, to become super enlightened and loving and put aside our Darwinian dog-eat-dog kind of program, much as I'd love that, I know that that's not about to happen. That was the old lady on the phone asking me if I wouldn't mind helping her out. So a good reason to kind of cut it off. I don't know why this isn't working now. Anyway, it's guys, I love stopping and chatting, and I really enjoy having people come and stop by